the day I almost gave up, what it taught me about mindset, an inspirational journey of resilience and mental transformation. Introduction. When everything falls apart. At some point in everyone's life, the weight of the world seems too much to bear. When dreams feel like cruel jokes, when effort feels meaningless, and when the voice in your head whispers the most dangerous words of all, maybe it's time to give up. I had that moment on a Tuesday morning in March. The rain was pounding against my apartment window, matching the storm that had been brewing in my mind for months. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, my fingers frozen above the keyboard. Another rejection email glowed mockingly from my inbox. The 47th one that year. For 3 years, I had been chasing what felt like an impossible dream. Every door I knocked on seemed to slam shut before I could even introduce myself. Every opportunity that sparkled with promise turned to dust in my hands. I was drowning in doubt, suffocating in the gap between who I thought I could become and who I actually was. That Tuesday morning, I almost quit. I almost walked away from everything I had worked for, everything I believed in, everything that made me who I was. But something extraordinary happened in that moment of complete despair, something that would change not just my circumstances, but my entire understanding of what the human mind is capable of. This is the story of that day, and more importantly, what it taught me about the incredible power of mindset to transform not just how we think, but how we live. Chapter 1. The Breaking Point. The path to my breaking point wasn't sudden. It was like water wearing away stone. Each small disappointment, each no, each closed door time had chipped away at my confidence until I barely recognized the person looking back at me in the mirror. I had started my journey with the kind of naive optimism that only comes from inexperience. I thought that if I really wanted something, I was certain that with sufficient effort and sacrifice, I could attain everything I desired. The universe, I thought, rewarded good intentions. How wrong I was. The first year brought challenges I expected, setbacks that I bounced back from with renewed determination. I told myself these were character-building experiences, stepping stones to something greater. As evidence that I was making my payments, I wore my hardships like badges of honor. The second year brought deeper wounds, rejections that cut closer to the bone, opportunities that seemed perfect until they vanished without explanation. I started questioning not just my methods, but my worth. Was I delusional? Was I chasing something that was never meant for me? It was my third year, and I was exhausted. My savings were depleted. My relationships were strained. My family's worried glances had evolved into gentle suggestions about more practical career paths. Friends who had once cheered me on now changed the subject when I mentioned my goals. But the cruelest enemy wasn't external judgment. It was the voice in my own head that had grown louder and more vicious with each passing month. The voice that whispered about wasted time, about foolish dreams, about the comfort of giving up and joining the ranks of those who had accepted reality. That Tuesday morning, that voice finally won. Or so I thought. I had prepared my surrender speech. I would call my parents and tell them they were right. I would update my resume and start applying for normal jobs. I would join the army of the defeated, those who had tried and failed and learned to live with the bitter taste of abandoned dreams. But as I reached for my phone, something stopped me. Not inspiration, not hope, not some Hollywood moment of sudden clarity. What stopped me was exhaustion with my own exhaustion. I was tired of being tired. I was sick of being sick of trying. And in that moment of being completely fed up with my own despair, a different kind of thought emerged. Not a positive thought, exactly, but a curious one. What if I'm thinking about this all wrong? Chapter 2. The Mindset Revelation. That single question opened a crack in the wall of my despair, and through that crack, light began to seep in, not the blinding flash of sudden enlightenment, but the gentle dawn of a new way of seeing. I began to examine my thoughts like a scientist studying specimens. What exactly was I telling myself? What story had I been living in? And most importantly, who was the narrator of that story? The narrator, I realized, was not me. It was a collection of fears, societal expectations, past disappointments, and inherited beliefs about how life should work. This narrator had convinced me that my worth was tied to my outcomes, that my identity was my achievements, and that failure was not just an event, but a verdict on my character. But what if that narrator was wrong? What if failure wasn't a judgment but feedback? What if rejection wasn't personal but simply information? What if the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be wasn't a chasm of inadequacy, but a space of possibility? This shift in perspective didn't happen overnight. It was like learning a new language, one thought at a time. I started small, challenging the most obviously destructive thoughts first. When my mind would say, "You're not good enough," I would ask, good enough for what? According to whom? And says who? I discovered that most of my limiting beliefs couldn't stand up to gentle questioning. They were assumptions I had never examined, stories I had inherited rather than chosen, fears dressed up as facts. The breakthrough came when I realized that my mindset wasn't just affecting how I felt about my situation, it was actually creating my situation. My belief that I wasn't good enough was causing me to present myself tentatively, to settle for opportunities that were beneath my capabilities, to interpret neutral responses as rejections. I was not just thinking my way into depression, I was thinking my way into failure. But if thoughts could create that kind of downward spiral, what could they create in the opposite direction? Chapter 3: Rewriting the Story. The day I almost gave up became the day I decided to give up on my old way of thinking. I made a conscious decision to become the author of my own story, rather than letting life write it for me. This wasn't about positive thinking or pretending problems didn't exist. It was about developing what I came to call intelligent optimism, the ability to see challenges clearly while maintaining faith in my ability to grow through them. I started by identifying the core beliefs that had been sabotaging me. The new story: I'm learning, growing, and improving every day. Success is not about being perfect, it's about being persistent and adaptable. The old story: every rejection means I'm not good enough. The old story: I should have succeeded by now. The new story: I'm exactly where I need to be in my journey. Growth takes time and my timeline is unique to me. But rewriting beliefs isn't enough if you don't change the supporting evidence. I realized I had been collecting proof of my inadequacy while ignoring evidence of my progress. I started keeping what I called a growth journal, documenting not just my wins, but my learning moments, my improvements, and my acts of courage. I began to see that I hadn't been failing for 3 years. I had been apprenticing. Every rejection had taught me something about my craft, my market, or myself. Every setback had built resilience I didn't know I possessed. Every moment of doubt had been an opportunity to choose faith over fear. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was profound. As my internal story changed, my external reality began to shift as well. I started taking different kinds of risks, pursuing different opportunities, and presenting myself with a confidence that was both authentic and attractive to others. 6 months after my near surrender, I received the call that changed everything. Not because the opportunity was perfect, but because I was finally ready to receive it. Chapter 4: The Science Behind the Shift. As my life began to transform, I became fascinated by the mechanics of what had happened to me. I dove into neuroscience, psychology, and behavioral research to understand the science behind mindset transformation. What I discovered was both humbling and empowering. The human brain, I learned, is remarkably plastic. Our neural pathways are not fixed highways, but flexible networks that can be rewired through conscious effort and repetition. Every thought we think, Every belief we hold and every story we tell ourselves literally changes the structure of our brains. This explained why my shift in thinking had created such dramatic changes in my life. I hadn't just changed my perspective, I had actually rewired my neural networks. The pathways that had been strengthened by years of self-doubt and catastrophic thinking were being weakened through disuse, while new pathways of possibility and resilience were being carved and reinforced. The research revealed several key principles that had been operating in my transformation. Neuroplasticity. Our brains remain changeable throughout our lives. The thoughts and beliefs that feel permanent are actually habits that can be unlearned and replaced. The reticular activating system. Our brains are constantly filtering information, highlighting what aligns with our beliefs and expectations while filtering out contradictory evidence. By changing my beliefs, I had literally changed what I was able to perceive in my environment. The growth mindset. Research by Dr. Carol Dweck showed that believing in our ability to grow and improve actually makes us more capable of growth and improvement. Fixed mindset creates fixed results. Growth mindset creates expanding possibilities. Cognitive reframing. The ability to look at the same situation from different perspectives is one of the most powerful mental skills we can develop. The facts of my situation hadn't changed, but my interpretation of those facts had transformed their meaning entirely. Understanding the science behind my transformation made it feel less like magic and more like methodology. I hadn't gotten lucky. I had unknowingly applied principles that could be learned, practiced, and replicated. This knowledge became the foundation for helping others navigate their own mindset transformations. Chapter 5. The Ripple Effects. The changes in my thinking created ripples that extended far beyond my career. As my mindset shifted, every area of my life began to transform. My relationships improved because I stopped seeking validation and started offering value. When you believe in your own worth, you stop trying to extract proof of it from. My health improved because I stopped using food and other distractions to numb disappointment. When challenges became opportunities rather than threats, I no longer needed to escape from my reality. My finances improved not just because of increased income, but because of decreased anxiety. I stopped making fear-based financial decisions and started investing in my growth rather than just protecting against loss. Most surprisingly, my relationships with family members who had been concerned about my unrealistic dreams began to heal. As I became more grounded in my self-worth and less desperate for external validation, I could receive their concerns as love rather than criticism. The career breakthrough that followed was almost anticlimactic compared to these deeper changes. Success, I discovered, wasn't the destination I had thought it was. It was a byproduct of becoming the kind of person who can handle success. This realization led to perhaps the most important insight of my journey. The goal was never to achieve a particular outcome. The goal was to become the kind of person who could navigate any outcome with grace, learning, and continued growth. Chapter 6. The Daily Practice. Daily practice is required to change one's mindset. Just as physical fitness requires consistent exercise, mental fitness requires consistent attention to our thoughts, beliefs, and internal narratives. I developed what I call the mindset maintenance system, a set of daily practices that keep me connected to empowering perspectives, even when life gets challenging. Morning. Intention setting. Each day begins with clarifying not just what I want to accomplish, but who I want to be while accomplishing it. This sets the tone for how I'll interpret the day's events. Evening reflection. Before sleep, I review the day through the lens of growth rather than judgment. What did I learn? How did I improve? What evidence did I collect about my capabilities? Thought auditing. Throughout the day, I periodically check in with my internal dialogue. Is my thinking serving my growth or limiting it? Am I operating from fear or faith? Reframe training. When I catch myself in limiting thoughts, I practice finding at least 3 alternative interpretations of the same situation. This keeps my perspective flexible and options open. growth celebration. I celebrate progress, not just achievements. Learning counts, trying counts, showing up counts. This keeps me motivated during the inevitable periods between major breakthroughs. These practices might seem simple, but their cumulative effect is profound. They create what I call mental momentum, a sustained forward movement of thought and energy that carries you through obstacles that would have previously stopped you cold. The key is consistency rather than perfection. Missing a day doesn't matter. Missing a week starts to weaken the new neural pathways. Like any skill, mindset management improves with practice and atrophies with neglect. Chapter 7. When the storm hits again. About 2 years after my transformation, life tested my new mindset with a challenge that made my original struggles seem trivial. A family health crisis, a major business setback, and a relationship ending all collided within the span of 3 months. The old me would have been devastated. The old story would have interpreted these events as evidence that I was cursed, that good things weren't meant to last, that I should have known better than to hope. But the new me had different tools and a different story. Instead of asking why me, I inquired, how can this help me grow? Instead of feeling victimized by circumstances, I felt curious about what these challenges might teach me. This wasn't denial or forced positivity. I felt the pain, grief, and stress fully, but I felt them as temporary visitors rather than permanent residents. I experienced difficulty without identifying with it. The most powerful realization during this period was that my worth and security didn't depend on my circumstances being perfect. I could be okay. More than okay. Even when life was hard. This knowledge created a deep sense of freedom and resilience that no external situation could touch. I navigated those challenges with a grace that surprised even me. Not because I was superhuman, but because I had finally learned to work with my mind rather than against it. The storms passed, as storms always do, but more importantly, I emerged from them stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The difficulties that could have been destructive became constructive because of how I chose to relate to them. Chapter 8. Sharing the tools learned. I started with small conversations, sharing insights with friends who were facing their own challenges. The impact was immediate and profound. I watched people's faces change as they grasped concepts that had taken me months to understand. I saw relationships heal, careers pivot, and dreams resurrect as people learned to question their limiting beliefs and author new stories about their possibilities. My life stabilized and flourished. I felt a growing desire to share what I had abilities. This led to speaking engagements, workshops, and eventually coaching others through their own mindset transformations. Each person I worked with taught me something new about the universal principles, while showing me their unique application. I learned that mindset transformation isn't a luxury for people with first-world problems. I worked with individuals facing poverty, illness, discrimination, and trauma who use these principles to create remarkable changes in their circumstances and, more importantly, in their experience of those circumstances. The most moving transformations came from people who had been stuck in victim mentalities for years or even decades. Watching someone realize that they have more power than they knew, that they can influence their experience even when they can't control their circumstances, is like watching someone discover they can fly. These experiences reinforced my understanding that mindset isn't about thinking your way out of real problems. It's about thinking your way into real solutions, real resilience, and real agency in your own life. Chapter 9. The Compound Effect. Years have passed since that Tuesday morning when I almost gave up, and I can now see the full compound effect of that single decision to change my thinking. Like interest accumulating on an investment, the benefits of mindset transformation grow exponentially over time. Each challenge I face now becomes easier, not because challenges get smaller, but because my capacity to handle them keeps growing. Each success becomes more meaningful, not because I achieve more, but because I understand the principles that created it and can replicate them. The career that seemed impossible is now established. The relationships that seemed damaged are now healed and stronger than ever. The financial security that seemed like a fantasy is now reality. But none of these external changes compare to the internal transformation. I live now with what I can only describe as quiet confidence, not the loud, boastful kind that masks insecurity, but the deep, unshakable kind that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes your way, not because life will always be easy, but because you've learned to be resourceful. This confidence isn't based on past achievements or future guarantees, it's based on present capability. The knowledge that you have the tools to learn, grow, adapt, and thrive regardless of circumstances. Perhaps most importantly, I've learned to enjoy the journey rather than just enduring it until I reach some imagined destination. Life isn't something to get through, it's something to grow through. Every day offers opportunities for development, contribution, and joy if you know how to see them. Chapter 10. Your Day of Decision. I wake up each day knowing that I will face situations I can't control, but I can always control my response to those situations. I will encounter problems I can't solve immediately, but I can always trust my ability to lead. As I finish sharing this story, I want you to know that I'm not special. Neither do I have any advantages or skills that you do not have. What I have is a set of tools and perspectives that anyone can learn and apply. The day I almost gave up was really the day I started showing up to my potential, to my possibilities, and to the power that had been within me all along. Your day of decision might be today. You might be reading this in your own moment of despair, wondering if you should quit, wondering if your dreams are foolish, wondering if you have what it takes. I want you to know that those feelings are not verdicts, they're invitations. Invitations to dig deeper, think differently, and discover capabilities you didn't know you possessed. Your voice is not the one telling you to give up. It's the voice of fear, of limitation, of small thinking that has been passed down through generations of people who never learned that they could rewrite their stories. Your real voice, the one that whispered your dreams to you in the first place, the one that got you started on this journey, the one that has kept you going despite setbacks. That voice is still there. Even if it seems quiet, it is still there. Listen to that voice. Feed that voice with new thoughts, new beliefs, and new stories about what's possible for you. Surround yourself with evidence of human potential rather than human limitation. Rather than embracing the idea of fixed fate, learn about the science of fate. Your mindset is not a luxury. It's your most practical tool. It determines what you see, what you believe is possible, how you interpret events, and ultimately, what actions you take. You can alter your life by altering your perspective. The day you almost give up might be the day you finally start to live. Not just surviving, not just getting by, but truly living with purpose, passion, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes your way. Your transformation starts with a single thought. What if I'm thinking about this all wrong? Ask that question, follow where it leads, trust the process. Your best life is still ahead of you. All you have to do is think it out. Conclusion: the endless beginning. The story I've shared with you isn't really finished. It's ongoing, evolving, with each day, each challenge, and each opportunity to apply these principles in new ways. The mindset that saved me on that Tuesday morning continues to serve me, guide me, and surprise me with its power unrun and grow towards solutions. I will experience emotions I might not enjoy, but I can always choose whether to be ruled by them or informed by them. This isn't a story about achieving perfect happiness or never facing difficulties again. It's a story about discovering that you are far more resilient, capable, and powerful than you've been taught to believe. It's about learning that your circumstances don't determine your experience. Your mindset does. The day I almost gave up became the day I gave up on limitation and embraced possibility. It became the day I stopped being the victim of my thoughts and became their author. It became the day I realized that the life I wanted wasn't something I had to hope for or wait for. It was something I could think my way into, one belief at a time. That same power exists within you. That same choice is available to you. That same transformation is possible for you. Your moment of almost giving up might be your moment of finally beginning. The question isn't whether you can change your life through changing your mindset. The question is, when will you start? Your time is now. Your power is real. Your possibilities are endless. Think your way forward. The world is waiting to see what you'll create.